just a little over 100 years ago, you guys had over 100 homeopathic hospitals all across your country. So, and these were big medical hospitals, New York, Ohio, and they were staffed with heaps of homeopaths. They had wards, all of the beds, and all of the people in these hospitals received only homeopathic medicines. So not only did you have 100 homeopathic hospitals, you had over 1,000 homeopathic pharmacies servicing all of these and the people. So during those days, they saw, you know, those days, like Spanish flu, what else? Like cholera, a lot of things. Scarlet fever was massive. And back then, you know, they didn't have any of the typical treatments that you would have today, you know, antibiotic therapy, these sorts of things. So back then, when you look at the comparisons of the mortality rates of the homeopathic hospitals compared to the conventional hospitals, the results are unambiguous and they are all recorded. Homeopathic hospitals were very, very, very successful in treating people. So for scarlet fever, you know, they would use belladonna, which is a remedy that we still use today. And this is something as well. Homeopathic principles have not changed, not one bit. The things that you used homeopathy for 200 years ago, you would use it for today. And that's the truth doesn't change. If you look at allopathy, you look at the conventional medicine, every second day they are pulling drugs. They are completely changing their tactics every year because they're not sure what they're doing. They haven't got a clue. Homeopathy has not changed because the laws are true. And so when we look at that, you know, it's absolutely thriving. It's rising to absolute fame. Very popular around, you know, the monarchies, rich and famous, you know, back then.
Okay, I titled this podcast, They Don't Want You to Know About This, because they don't. There's a reason why so many people have not heard about homeopathy. They have no idea what it is or what it truly is and what it can do for you. And it's been purposefully kept from you. And it's been around for a long, long time. And many high-level people have said things like, oh, I don't know about that homeopathy, but yet they are still using it behind the scenes. And so we talk about the reasons, we talk about the mind-blowing reasons and the effects that it can have on not just only your physical health, but your emotional health and your energetic health, your frequency, because this is something that can completely change your life very quickly with thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of case studies around the world. And so I brought on someone who is a absolutely brilliant homeopath. And so we got into a deep discussion. If you want to look at a specific part, listen to a specific part, check out the bookmarks below. Otherwise, let's get into it. You are one of the most knowledgeable people. I've been following you for a while and what you've been doing when it comes to homeopathy. So I think we're going to get into a lot of different aspects of it, and especially the vibrational metaphysical, because that's what we do here on this podcast. So I'd love to just start out as if I know nothing about it, so that people who do know nothing about it can get something from it.
Yep.
You know, so where would you start if you were just saying homeopathy? What is it?
So I guess I can just tell you how I found it, because that's where, you know, you really see what it is. So my sister was chronically sick. Like, she was in and out of hospital every couple of months. She'd have chronic UTIs. They'd get into her blood. And the doctors at the hospital just knew nothing. So for 7 years, in and out, she's taking IV antibiotics, just flooding the body. At the end of it, they say to her, you know, the only solution is for you to be on prophylactic antibiotics every day for the rest of your life, which is just, anybody who knows anything about health is like, what? That cannot be the only answer you've got. And so I'm studying to be a naturopath at the time. Now, most people know naturopathy. This is our herbs, our supplements, along those lines. So she had done all of the holistic treatments: acupuncture, Chinese medicine, naturopathy, nutrition, meditation. She quit her job at this point. She was full-time in real estate. She couldn't even work a job by this point because her bladder was incontinent, and she's 21 years old. So it's like full-on pathology. And I have this uni lecturer, and he keeps saying to me, oh, you should try homeopathy. You know, you'd love it. You'd be a really good homeopath. And because I'd never heard of homeopathy or what a homeopath was, I completely fobbed him off. For like years, I fobbed him off. Then one day he said it to me when she was in hospital, and I was like, right, that's it. If you can cure my sister's chronic condition, I'll change my degree next week. And he's like, right, when can she meet with me? So we meet in a coffee shop, and for the next 90 minutes, he's asking her all about her life, growing up, her emotions, any traumas, what foods she craves, just everything about her life. And then, of course, about her physical health. And at the end of that, he gives her this little bottle of homeopathic drops. Now, homeopathy is frequency taken from nature, instilled into water initially, and then potentized and preserved with brandy. So here is a frequency in a bottle of the Staphysagria plant, which is just a plant you find in nature. So he gives that to her and he says, take this every morning, 2 drops under the tongue, every evening, 2 drops under the tongue. And like, we're sort of thinking like, this seems like too simple, I'm not sure about this. We go home, she starts doing it. We notice within 2 days, her bladder incontinence has completely stopped and she starts to have like all these discharges coming out. And the interesting thing is that he said to us, don't be surprised if you feel more emotional and you feel things coming up to the surface. Now, during the consult, he'd asked her, do you struggle with anger? Do you think that you suppress anger? And she's like, no, not really. My sister's really sweet. My sister's only 12 months younger than me, so we're like twins, and she's sweet. And he's like, oh, okay. And he's like, what about like if you're driving and someone cuts you off? And then we like laugh because she's a psycho, like really angry if someone cuts her off. And for women, like in a culture where it's not really appropriate for people to really get angry very often, this is the sort of place where you see your suppressed anger come out in safe places, things like in traffic, or just getting angry about other little insignificant things. So you don't think you're an angry person. Anyway, she's taking this Staphysagria and up is bubbling like this deep-rooted resentment from things that are, 10 years ago. And so that was very interesting to us. And long story short, never back to the hospital with UTIs like that again, where she had gotten them every single, couple of months. So I'm looking at that and then I'm thinking, wow, okay. So then I start to dig into it because I'm like, holy crap, if I'm going to change my degree, I want to at least know what this is and how that happened. I want to see, could this possibly be just a placebo? But you have to think to yourself, if somebody was going to give a placebo, don't you think it would be the doctors in the hospital with a white coat that everybody respects and they say, well, this is going to work? Why would you listen to this random man in a coffee shop who gives you these drops under the tongue? I find that all the time. Doctors are always telling me like, could it just be a placebo? The mind's really powerful. And I think, well, why aren't you very good at, giving people the placebo effect? But then I started to dig into it. So then I get every book out of the library that I can to do with homeopathic medicine. And what I find from that just blew my mind. And basically, so to give you a quick short on what actually is it is curing the body using the principles of like cures like. Now, Hippocrates, which most people know, have heard of, sort of considered, the father of medicine. All of our medical doctors take the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. So they all respect, Hippocrates in the origins of it. But he said famously, there are 2 laws of cure. You can cure by the law of opposites, which is what Western medicine went with. You've got a fever, bring it down. You've got inflammation in your sprained ankle, use an anti-inflammatory. They ward off the processes of the body with opposites pretty much every single time. Now, the homeopath, Hippocrates also said you can also cure by the law of similars. That means if your body is running a fever, you want to give a tiny nanodose of a product, a natural product or any product that would also stimulate a fever. Now, when you do that, when you ingest something that would usually cause a fever, the body recognizes the frequency of it and it recalibrates itself. And then the fever reduces. So you can see they are completely opposing viewpoints. One, the law of similars, one, the law of opposites. So in that, to give you an example of it. When somebody has like gastro, right? They're vomiting, they've got diarrhea, stomach may be crampy. We would use homeopathic Arsenicum album. Now, this is made from arsenic, like the poison arsenic, but it's diluted and succussed, so it's only the energy of arsenic. And I'm sure you and all your followers would know, when you dilute in water, the frequency remains, right? All of these studies are there, that the nanodoses, the molecular structure of the water has been changed when that arsenic has been added. So it changes it. So the water is recognizing that arsenic. And when you look at homeopathic remedies under a microscope, when they're flash frozen, the structures of every remedy, every frequency from nature is slightly different. And of course, so we have thousands of remedies made from nature. They're all different under the microscope when you look at those structures underwater. Now, when they're ingested into the body, they produce different effects. They recalibrate the body in different ways. But let's say arsenic, you dilute, succuss, so that you eventually end up with the pure energetic resonance of arsenic. We call that Arsenicum album. Now, what happens if you were to drink like a little bit of arsenic, the pure poison? You would get vomiting and diarrhea and a very sore stomach. So when you give the arsenic homeopathic to somebody with the gastro, vomiting and diarrhea, you will notice that that completely heals it. And very quickly, people can be miserable with gastro. And the Arsenicum album does the job. So this is what I mean by the law of similars. Give the substance for which, matches your symptoms. Your body will recognize that frequency and your body will heal itself. It's completely different to Western medicine.
So the body will heal itself by being exposed to the same frequency. So then my question would be, do you feel like the body isn't recognizing it until you add that? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
What is that trigger point?
Yeah, I feel in general, the body knows what it's doing. In a normal, strong human being, the body knows what it's doing. If you've got gastro, let's say you've got food poisoning, the body is causing you to vomit and it's giving you diarrhea because it's trying to get it out. The body is divinely intelligent. But for some people, and especially like as people get weaker, if they've been using pharmaceuticals to suppress all of their bodily functions for years on end, the body can start to play up. And sometimes it needs that energetic reminder of like, hey, this is how we function. So it's really interesting when somebody has gastro and they might be really miserable with nausea. They take Arsenicum album, within 20 seconds, they power chuck like there's no tomorrow. And then they're like, wow, I feel so much better. And it's like the whole process is completely brought to an end like that. That is extremely common. I hear that from all the parents who have our first aid kits and they're like, whoa, But yes, I think the body can get stuck in some of its disease processes. And I mean, when we look at chronic disease around the world today, people are stuck. The process is stuck. And that's sort of exactly what it means is, a lot of these things, they should have been self-resolving. A typical acute is self-resolving, but because people keep meddling in the wrong ways, because they don't know how to do it in the most sort of sensible way, they think that their only option is, X, Y, Z. That's where we've really driven chronic disease deeper. And a lot of people are stuck.
So why do you think that homeopathy is so not in people's awareness? Is it purposeful?
Well,
what do you think?
Well, in the US alone, just a little over 100 years ago, you guys had over 100 homeopathic hospitals all across your country. So, and these were big medical hospitals, New York, Ohio, and they were staffed with heaps of homeopaths. They had wards, all of the beds, and all of the people in these hospitals received only homeopathic medicines. So not only did you have 100 homeopathic hospitals, you had over 1,000 homeopathic pharmacies servicing all of these and the people. So During those days, they saw, the pandemics of those days, like Spanish flu, what else? Like cholera, a lot of things. Scarlet fever was massive. And back then, they didn't have any of the typical treatments that you would have today, antibiotic therapy, these sorts of things. So back then, when you look at the comparisons of the mortality rates of the homeopathic hospitals compared to the conventional hospitals, the results are unambiguous and they are all recorded. Homeopathic hospitals were very, very, very successful in treating people. So for scarlet fever, they would use belladonna, which is a remedy that we still use today. And this is something as well. Homeopathic principles have not changed, not one bit. The things that you used homeopathy for 200 years ago, you would use it for today. And that's the truth doesn't change. If you look at allopathy, you look at the conventional medicine, every second day they are pulling drugs. They are completely changing their tactics every year because they're not sure what they're doing. They haven't got a clue. Homeopathy has not changed because the laws are true. And so when we look at that, it's absolutely thriving. It's rising to absolute fame. Very popular around, the monarchies, rich and famous, back then. But they also shared it with the people. That was very much so. So during, say, for example, the scarlet fever outbreaks, people were lining up around the houses of homeopaths, like around the block, waiting to get their homeopathic medicines to help them both prevent contracting scarlet fever, but also to treat it. So, and back then people were dying of these like sorts of diseases, like dropping like flies. So treatment was like very serious. So you have that. And then you have, of course, the rise of pharmaceutical medicine. So most people would consider J.D. Rockefeller to be sort of the figurehead, the father of modern medicine. But they don't realize he had 3 private homeopaths for his own family. So while he is getting, all of the best treatment and he lives into his 90s, he sort of, released the Flexner report, sort of funded it, got that going. Then we have pretty much also what we see today is pharmaceuticals and like J.D. Rockefeller, you throw 10 million at a university, let's say Boston University, where all of the prestigious universities back then taught homeopathy. It was not this second class thing. It was like on par with medicine. But then they say, we will only donate these millions if you promise to stop teaching homeopathy. Now, what happens when people stop teaching it? People stop learning it. I mean, they handed it down in the households. A lot of the mothers knew it really well. A lot of the nurses were brilliant, and people have fought to keep it going. And look, it's still here now. So they succeeded, but largely this is why people don't know about it and just really how successful it was. And it is the ultimate competition to pharma, if we're going to be honest. No other medicine can families have in their home, use safely, effectively, with the results that you get there. And so we're in direct competition, which is funny because my dad is a doctor. And it's like, well, how does that go? But, even though I definitely, I would go to the hospital, you'd tell anybody, go for those emergency situations where you need the law of opposites. Like if you're in a car accident, boy, you want like the drugs and you want that. And life-saving surgeries, that's a different matter. But I'm talking about chronic disease for which makes up 90%, if not more, of who is actually in the hospital right now. And it doesn't have to be that way.
Ooh, you're telling me we're up against the big pharma. I'm just like,
go.
Oh God. Okay. Well, howdy, big pharma. Where are we there? Ooh. Okay. But I also kind of realized that this is important. It needs to be said because we can't live our lives in fear. And I think the biggest disservice that people are often given is that they just don't know. Right? They just don't have access to knowledge. I mean, if we look throughout history, that's what it's been. It's like a select few had the knowledge of what worked and had the resources, the kings or whatever. And now we're in the age of information, and still people don't even know about this. So I think it's important, because one of the interesting things about this is we're talking about chronic stuff, yeah, but we're also haven't talked about the emotional stuff as much,
Yeah.
So that's something I'm fascinated in, because a lot of what I talk about is vibration, frequency, how that works. So where would you start off if you were trying to learn about how this can help you not only with physical things, but emotional, spiritual? Because I know that we've talked about how there's alchemical roots, there's an ancient roots to this as well,
So essentially, the homeopathic medicines with the vibrational aspect of it, they are working on the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, as well as the physical, because we are a whole being. It is a whole energetic field. Now, at the moment of conception, when you look at it under the microscope, you see the sperm reaches the egg, you see a blast of light. They call it the zinc spark. And what I would sort of hypothesize is that is the moment, where the spirit and the soul enter the body. And it's that divine energetic blueprint that goes on to grow the baby. This is how, the little fetus knows how to knit itself together. Now, that is contributed by mum and dad, that energy. So for one, we should talk about like the generational aspects of the energy that we inherit, because what I am seeing in clinic is that this is largely where, 80% of people are really stuck because they're doing the work on themselves, and they've looked back through their own lives, and maybe they've processed a lot of the traumas that they've been through, and they're really at peace with that. But they're like, why do I still not feel free? I feel like bound by some of these things. When you look at the studies that they've done with mice, so for example, they did one where they would let these mice smell the scent of cherry blossom. And then moments later, they would electroshock these poor mice. Then they would repeat the experiment, smell the cherry blossom, shock them. Cherry blossom, shock them. Before too long, of course, they smell the cherry blossom. The mice go into an absolute frenzy because they know what's coming. It's painful, and they're like scattered and anxious. Now, with the offspring of those mice, the scientists followed them. Now, they would let the next generation of these mice smell the cherry blossom, and immediately they went into a panicked frenzy, having never been electroshocked. So it's in their cellular memory, the energetics. So we always talk about like genetics, you've passed on your genes and what you inherit from your parents. And we know this is true. I mean, look at how much oftentimes we look like our parents, even in our physical features that we, receive from them. We receive the energetics. That's what drives the actual blueprint to knit us together. It's energetics, Genetics is very limited in the way they look at it anyway, in the mainstream. So then they followed those mice, the offspring of that second generation, the third generation, even still smell the cherry blossom, panicked, anxious, total mess. So we see this in everyday life, and even modern scientists have commented on it in regards to the prisoner of war, the children, the great-grandchildren whose grandparents were in Nazi Germany and victims in, the Holocaust and all of that. They were wondering, why are these grandchildren suffering with PTSD? They've never been through anything traumatic in their life. Why can they just not cope with life?
And my grandpa was Ukrainian, and he came over in World War II. So I can directly relate
to the heaviness of that. Yep. Amazing. And that's what we're seeing today. And so we know the wars, they are the big ones, of course, that shock. And it's the deeper emotion, the bigger the emotional response. Of course, the more it's imprinted on the energy, the more likely we are to pass it on subsequently through the generations. But what I would say we're dealing with these days is a lot of people whose grandparents, parents never resolved any of their issues. And so it just sort of compiles into this big derangement, I would say, of the spirit, the energetic body, is how I would look at it. So that's one thing. So how does homeopathy actually come in and recalibrate that? Well, by nature of the frequencies, when you get the frequency that matches the distortion that has come down your family lines, you expose your body to it, and the outpourings of that, the things that you will see, the emotions that come up, we know that we are getting to the roots of the generational issues that have come down the line. Now, of course, as a homeopath, I can also marry these up with the physical symptoms. That gives me the clues. So if you tell me that your family is riddled with rheumatoid arthritis, autoimmune issues, type 1 diabetes, psoriasis, maybe there's a lot of deep, dark depression in the family, any history of suicides in the family, these sorts of things, I know what miasm, that's what we call in homeopathy when we're talking about the things passed down through generations, the miasm. What was the original disturbance that threw the energy out of all of those generations? I know what to give to recalibrate that. So it is fascinating when you look at the patterns of disease, because it's no coincidence. Now, mainstream medicine just says that's your genetics. And of course I say that's your energetics. And we can flip these switches on and off using homeopathy, the frequency to heal. And that healing is systemic. That's your spirit. And it's most people, I would say these days, they have a wounded spirit in one way or another. This is why we are addicted to things. We're addicted to substances to try and make me feel better. We are, in bad situations, toxic situations, no boundaries, crap partners, putting up with things that we should not. And it's because we largely don't feel free in our spirit because it's wounded. So this is where homeopathy comes in, and I see the healing profoundly with people. So let me give you just a random example, which I'll just give you one, but I saw
you got hundreds,
a million, sure. And I'm what's going to be the best one to showcase this? But one example is a beautiful woman that I saw in my early days of practicing, and she came in and we're going through sort of her physicals and all of that, and she tells me, when I was 25, I got married to this man, and I loved him. He was so charming and he was so lovely to me, treated me so well. But as soon as we got married, he started to beat me, and she was so shocked. And a couple of years after that, she managed to break free of it, stayed single for a little while, really tried to work on herself. And then she met this other beautiful man, and she was so excited, and gets married, only to find out not long after he starts hitting her as well. Eventually breaks free, and then she just says, I'm just going to stay single for the rest of my life. I'm not risking that. Now, when she's telling me that, we can sort of see there's a bit of a pattern here, in that. And I'm sure a lot of us know and are aware of, the people who will say, oh, in every relationship I'm ever in, I always get cheated on, or he's always just not available and non-committal, or something like that. There are people, and it's this pattern is where we're looking at, because, bad things can happen in life. I don't go so far as to say that every single little thing is, I think we're also here to learn, and just things just happen, life can be hard. But when you're looking at the vibrational patterns, sometimes they're distinct, and most people have a distinct vibrational pattern. And so I said to this woman, and then I'm digging, and I'm like, okay, I just want to find, where is the root of this? Why is this vibrational wound attracting these men into your life? And I said, what was your parents' relationship like? Were they ever abusive? Were your parents ever really cruel to you? Anyone in your life like that? She's like, no, my parents had a great relationship. And she's sort of pondering for a while. She's like, oh, well, I guess when I was younger, my older brother would go to school, and he got really badly bullied at school. And as a result, when he got home, he was just full of rage and angst because he'd been picked on all day. And he would take that out on me physically. I was his punching bag. And, I would cry to my mum about it, but she just said, he's just going through a hard time, didn't really defend or protect her daughter. And so in that, you can see here we have set up at that very early age, that vibrational wound, you are worthy of being abused and that sort of thing. And then she has naturally created these situations in life where that has been repeated. Now, the remedy that I gave her for that and I spoke to her 2 years after that appointment, and it had been completely recalibrated. And this is where somebody can actually walk into her life where she is like safe. She feels worthy. She no longer has to attract that because her vibration has completely healed in that. And I see, this happens with people's jobs, people who would love like a career, but they've got some self-limiting beliefs. Maybe their parents never succeeded in work, or maybe they just never believed in themselves as a child. Maybe whatever it is that caused them to not be able to vibrationally attract the thing that they truly want, despite, all of the meditating. It might be so deep rooted on a cellular level that you just need that vibration to come in and just recalibrate it, like heal the whole spirit. All right. Then people go out, they get the call the next day. It comes to them, and people will message me like, you are not going to believe what happened. I was like, try me. I believe I will. And, things, and it goes across, of course, all things, work, abundance, financial things. If you grew up in poverty, it is going to be harder for you to attract prosperity. So we all get dealt, a set of cards when we're born. And I'd say we all get given challenging areas. So some people definitely get more challenges, of course, by virtue of whatever situation they were born into. But what I would say is homeopathy is like, it's the shortcut to altering your vibration. I believe that people can heal anything. I don't believe that anybody has to be reliant on anything outside of themselves, including homeopathy. I think that, you look at the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, and completely, there are people who can get to that point, that depth within themselves that they can completely alter. And they have the ability to sort of, quantumly leap into that new life. But when I see the people around me, most people are just not at that level. Now, homeopathy, I give them the initial budge, and it opens up their eyes to the power of vibration. And it's from there that they just continue on their up and up journey.
I'm taking this in. I mean, were you like this when you first heard about it? You're just like, what do I even say?
Yeah, I started.
I'm just kind of flabbergasted.
I just kept reading the books, and I was in shock. So I was in my early 20s when I found it, and I just sat in a coffee shop, just drinking hot, sweet drinks all day, just reading and reading and reading. And since then, honestly, it has not changed. The love and the passion for it, what it does to transform people's lives. And, I work with a lot of people who experienced sexual abuse as children. Now, that's, of course, one of the more shocking, deeply imprinted aspects, into people's psyche and their spirit. It's a big spiritual wound. Oftentimes it's tied up in, because they have never even really been able to talk about it. It's sort of like something that they don't often bring up. Mind you, some of them have been in therapy for decades and they've just not broken through. They come and see me, and I give them that bottle, and I say, I know it's hard to believe right now, but we are about to break through everything that has held you back, that pattern, because they don't want to be stuck in it. They don't want to remember it. They don't want to talk about it even. They want to truly let it go on the cellular level, the deepest aspects of the human body, that energetic blueprint. And when they do, not only does the physical pathology change, because a lot of these women, they will experience issues in the genitourinary region, which makes sense, right? The trauma is in that region. Fertility issues ensue, urinary tract infections, this sort of stuff. And the physicals change, but they just say it is the load, it is gone. And of course they have the memory of it, but the emotional, that baggage, it's just gone. And I'm talking, I can achieve that with patients in 2 months. And they will say, I have been in therapy for 20 years. And I wish everybody knew the power of homeopathy to get them unstuck, because we don't have to suffer as much as we are suffering. There's beauty in suffering to an extent, because we grow, we become compassionate, we can relate to each other. But the level of suffering in the world right now, it's unnecessary.
So nature gave us a tool to deal with our unconscious, essentially. Mm-hmm. And most people don't even realize it. So you can do the Dr. Joe way.
Yep.
But you don't have to.
Yep.
because it's almost like, I'm curious your perspective on psychedelics versus homeopathy, because some people see psychedelics as
That way.
a shortcut. And so, I know psychedelic is more of a trip,
Yeah.
but you're still having a trip with homeopathy, I feel like, but it's may not be out of this dimension type trip. I mean,
Yeah.
have you experimented? What do you think the differences are?
I am a bit straighty 180 with that. And I know just too many Fruit Loops who are hooked on the whole ayahuasca, and it doesn't lure me. But I will say that I know people who have had amazing breakthroughs, and it's of course in going back to that original point, and it can be for many people recalibrating of the human spirit, where they realize, oh wow, I don't need to carry that load anymore. I can see like the similar aspects of going back to the original wound and healing. I am elitist as to say that homeopathy is even better. But
have you done those before? Have you experimented yourself?
No. So yeah, okay. I really can't say. How about you?
I have a little bit, yes. I've delved, but I am very intrigued by, I've never heard, actually this is a great question to ask you now. Some people, like I had another friend on who we talked about reincarnation and psychedelics, and he was talking to me about how he runs a help, I don't know if you'd call it a help center, but basically he runs a container for people that have had psychotic experiences from psychedelics and it being actually a negative thing on their life. And so have you seen anything like that happen with homeopathy?
No. And I mean, this is fascinating because I've seen hundreds of patients. So I have all the data of like their journey, and it doesn't have the power to cause such an effect. So let's say, it will bring trauma up to the surface, and it can be heavy and it can be uncomfortable. But I think when you're doing it with homeopathy, with that vibration flooding the human spirit, the body knows at what rate to bring it up to the surface. It's like it knows divinely what you can handle, and it does not, I've not seen anybody be overwhelmed to that point. I mean, I work with people with suicidal depression where they're on the brink and they're telling me, I don't want to actually be here anymore. And never have I lost somebody in that, even with all that we've worked through. So homeopathics it's incredible. And what you'll often find in cases where the person, if it's been massive trauma, it will start to come up in their dreams, and dreams start to flow for everybody. But with the people who have been through hell, the dreams is where a lot of the healing starts, because it's a really gentle way for the subconscious to recalibrate itself. So the person is aware of it, but it doesn't have to be their everyday thoughts and feelings and memories as such. So that's something that is really awesome as well. But with the psychedelics, it's also, I think, the person who's doing it and their reason for it, because I think there's just a lot of people who, go down that track and they want to be, sort of just enlightened, but I would say, they're really wounded. Then they get hooked on it. And I mean, it's like this relentless, and to an extent, that's almost avoidance of like everyday life. I think some people just almost want to live on another planet. They want to live in this other dimension, whereas I'm a lover of like, we're on earth, like we're here to like love each other, love this earth, have the full like totality of the human experience. And I think when people get obsessed with that spiritual side, and they maybe even like becoming like yogis, and like they just need to be inward all the time, I sort of see that as a like, oh, but why can't you like live and have these human experiences and have fun? I think it's almost a sign of even further healing if you can live and enjoy your life and have the balance in the spiritual aspect as well. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Totally know what you mean, because I've seen it over the years. People just wanting to escape. I mean, to me, that actually comes from, I see it outside of religion, but it comes from Western religion. Because you have a lot of Western religion that says, oh, there's a better place in here, just suffer through and follow these rules and you'll be good. And so I think people that leave religion still don't even realize that unconsciously they're seeking to escape this, because there's still that subconscious thought that that this isn't good enough, that we can't enjoy this experience, that it can't be beautiful. And so, yeah, I totally agree with you.
And the effect when you look down family lines on the like domination of like severe sort of like religious upbringing, the effects on the human spirit, like you literally see it manifest in the body, and in the psyche as well, because it's an impossible, for many people, it's an impossible expectation to live up to these old standards, and the guilt and the shame and all of that is racked. And this is, again, deeply within the body. So even when people leave the church, it stays with them. And of course, we know in the first 7 years of life, the brain's like a tape recorder, and everything that they took in, it can be very difficult to shift out of that, but absolutely possible. And this is, it's like, what's the goal of all this? You know, what's the goal of the work? And for me, it's to be free, to feel free in your mind, not addicted to anything, not reliant to anything. And you've got nothing to prove, nothing to hide. You just feel free to be yourself and live. And that's where we're headed.
And you feel like homeopathy really helps with that, right?
100%.
Even
100%.
even with people in the church, you feel.
Yes. Yeah. And so to give you an example.
Sorry, let me word that better. Even with people who have religious trauma, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And they are some of the heaviest, because it's it's deep. Like that's a spiritual thing of thinking like, am I good? Is my salvation secure? If I step outside of these lines, oh gosh, like constant fear, really. Even when they logically in their mind now reject it, the spirit still holds on to those fears. So when they do things, it's often contaminated. But when people take homeopathics and like these chains start to break, so you have people going through life who are, you know, chronic people pleasers. You know, it's a pathological issue in society today, and it's because people want to be liked, and they're going above and beyond. They're trying to, you know, prove their worth. And let's say like something in the workplace, when it's extremely common in women, they will do that, and men, but women will do it to the point of absolute burnout. They are trying to juggle so much, and so the body knows like it can't cope, and so it starts to throw out these symptoms. Now, one, for example, is glandular fever, which you call mono in the States, and it really, you know, that virus in itself. And this is the thing too, you are more susceptible to certain viruses when your vibration is at a certain level. Like that's your distortion. This is what you will attract. Same goes for things like strep throat. And it's really funny because, of course, you know, these bacteria and viruses, they vibrate at a certain frequency too. So if your body is a match, this is where you start to manifest. So, you know, everybody, all of the women who are super, oftentimes they're high functioning and they're, you know, perfectionists, on the lookout for everything. They're very vigilant. These are the women who are typically getting the mold exposure, mold toxicity illness. Now, mold toxicity is real. You know, water damage is real. But when you're looking in a house and you're wondering, and it's, you know, maybe very low levels of mold, you know, why is this woman the only one affected? Husband's totally fine. And it's like, it's the vibration as well is playing into that as to what they're susceptible to. Anyway, back to my original story. When people start taking their homeopathics and they've been these chronic people pleasers, all of a sudden they say to me, you won't believe this, I actually just quit my job because there's something else that I really love and I've been wanting to pursue for ages. And actually, I just cannot tolerate my job any longer. Like I have been going above and beyond for 10 years. And now I'm ready. I just want to pursue the thing that I want. And they venture off in that and they're content in it, where for 10 years they have wanted to do that and they have just stayed in that job. It's that obligation, that duty. I need people to like me. I can't let them down. When the human body, the human spirit is like fortified and strong, the person will do what they must do to be healthy. And it is not healthy to sit in a job that you do not enjoy and work extensive hours beyond what the human body should. So the spirit will protect you. It will cause you to want to quit. You will not be able to tolerate the intolerable anymore. And on that note, when we look at cancer in homeopathy, we call it the cancer miasm. This is the distortion of the energetic field that does run down family lines in terms of energetics. So you definitely see the proneness in people. But the nature of these people, often in the energetics, is to tolerate the intolerable. And that could be in a very bad, toxic relationship where they're just tolerating it, like on end. It can be in the workplace where they're tolerating the intolerable, but this is where you see disease made manifest. So we want to flip those epigenetic switches off, but it will also cause you to change your life so that lifestyle-wise, you're not susceptible to that anymore.
And then once you're at a different vibrational threshold, your actions will inherently change.
Yep. Definitely.
And so I bet that's what it is, right? It's kind of like this trickle-down effect. It's like, most people don't understand that why they're doing things is because they're at a certain frequency and it's unconscious. And then most people are like, okay, I got to go into the shadow, but they're just like kind of guessing at what the story is, because we know in science that we try to remember the past and it's not even really accurate most of the time.
Yeah.
So that's another hard part of this equation. So if there's something that brings that up naturally, I think that's beautiful, because it goes back to the principle of people always trying to look for healing, and then they're trying to find things to heal and they get stuck in a trap. But if it's something that's naturally occurring in the present moment, then you can address it and you know this is viscerally what I'm experiencing now, not, oh, I need to go into the sadness because I haven't dealt with my breakup, so I got to put sad music on. That's a whole, I feel like those things are very different, and a lot of people don't realize that,
Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story. So I make first aid kits for people to have in the home. So they've got access to 20, 30 different frequencies that really help. And I was making these up with my mum, and this was only like 2 years ago. And I consider myself a pretty well calibrated person, as we all do. And I drop a bottle of Ignatia, and it's like the little pilules, the stock-coated pilules, as I'm dispensing them. And so instead of picking them up and walking to the bin and throwing them in the bin, I just toss them in my mouth. So homeopathy comes in two forms. You'll see them in all the health food stores as the little pilules or liquid stock. Anyway, so I throw these pilules in my mouth, and Mum and I keep working, and we're having a great time, laughing, talking smack. Anyway, she tells me that my auntie might be getting a divorce. And I was like, oh, that's sad. And she's like, yeah, relationships are hard. And I'm like, yeah. And then my mum sort of brings up her divorce of my stepdad. And Ignatia is the homeopathic remedy for grief, when it's grief, shock, fright, loss. It's like a heartbreak remedy. And you know how people can sort of get stuck in that wall. But the Ignatia, oftentimes they're not able to actually feel the sadness. It's like they become more numb to it. And so my mum's talking about Dean, my stepdad, who he was with us from when I was 3 until I was 11, nearly 12. So pretty much like a dad, because I lived with my mum and him. So I was with him all the time. And he's like this high level, like emergency. In Australia, we call it special emergency response team. It's like the highest level police officer. You guys, it's, I don't know, Marines or whatever your special forces are. So like he was protective. He was fun. Everything about him I just loved. And when I was 11, one morning he woke up and he's like, I'm leaving. And I just thought it was a joke. I'm like, what? Like, we were so happy with my siblings and him. And I'm like, no. And I honestly thought it was a joke until a couple of hours later, like his police friends come and they're helping pack up some of his furniture. And I'm like, what? And I fully, remember that day. And so I'm talking to my mum and I was like, yeah, your divorce was, that was really sad. And then I say to Mum, do you think he ever really loved us? And as I'm saying the words, as they come out of my mouth, I like completely choke on the words. And if you heard me ask it, it sounded like a child asking, like, do you think he ever really loved us? And my mum looked at me and she's like, you're not serious. And I was like, no. And the tears had already like welled up in my eyes. So we're talking about an event that happened 20 years ago. And the emotional response, it was like this visceral response that I like couldn't hold back. And then I'm laughing and crying at the same time with my mum, because I'm like, wow, I can't believe I even feel this way. I said, we're good friends now. And so he went off to the Iraq war and we didn't see him for 8 years. Then he came back and he apologized to my mom and he's like, I was just going through a hard time and blah, blah, blah. But, the shock of a child, and I was 11, I couldn't process the enormity of like losing somebody that I love so much. And not only are they getting a divorce, but he's overseas. I don't see him for 8 years. It was grief. It was true grief deep in my cells that I never really even cried about it, because, you're 11 years old. It's like, I'm school captain. I'm going to school. I've got all my friends. It's fine. I don't even think about it. But where it was made manifest was in my relationships. And that was, I was such a vibrational mismatch in relationships. So I had one high school boyfriend who was lovely, but he was older than me. So he left school and then we just separated. But from leaving school, for 7 years, all I wanted to do was settle down, have kids, get married, and just have that sort of perfect, little home life that I didn't have because my parents divorced quite a bit. And so I would like just be so in love with these people, and anybody that I was super in love with, they were like, nah, not interested. And all of the people who were like so obsessed with me, I was like, I don't know. It felt like the ick. I was like, I know. And I couldn't justify why, And so for 7 years, I was this pathological mismatch. So I didn't date like properly. I didn't have a boyfriend for 7 years, which is a long time when you're talking about the age of like, 17 to 24, when like everyone's dating, everyone's got boyfriends, girlfriends. So yeah, really out of line. And it got to the end of that where I realized like, wait, and at this point, I'm started studying homeopathy. So I see it for what it is. I'm like, oh, this is like a vibrational mismatch. And from that shock as a child and that grief and him leaving, there I developed this like, fear of commitment for one, fear of rejection as well, So how do people manifest that? It's like you just go for people that are not really going to want to settle down, even though consciously that's all I wanted. My subconscious was like, hell no. You know what comes with that? Risk of being heartbroken again, and that we cannot do. So I'm in student clinic at my uni, and we just learned that day about this remedy called lycopodium. And in lycopodium, you see that fear of commitment. It's sort of, they say it's typically more a men's remedy in terms of, the men who'll just never settle down. They'll never commit. And it's like, because they have a fear of failure, fear of commitment, so they won't commit to women. And I was like, oh, that sort of sounds familiar. And so we go into the student clinic and I take a dose of it. And I tell my friends like what I'm doing. And I'm like, yeah. And so I didn't think much more on it. Took the dose that day. And a couple of days later, I worked in real estate at the time while I was studying, and I'm walking around the lake near where I work, and I'm listening to some podcast, probably some, I liked Abraham Hicks, and I'm pretty sure that's what I was listening to at the time. But it just clicked something internally, and I had that thought. It's as if the lycopodium cracked open the door for me to be able to see, wow, you have been waiting until you are perfect. Like you're so scared of a divorce or so scared of getting heartbroken that you're waiting until you're perfect before you let that relationship happen. And when I realized that, it's like, well, I'm never going to be perfect. And when I look at all of the men that I've been attracted to, none of them are perfect. So why on earth am I putting that on myself? That's ridiculous. And I've literally felt the shift in my mind, in my body. And I was like, wow, that's silly. It was just like, yeah, I don't need to be afraid of that. Now, the next day, of course, literally the next day. And this is why I am also I am such a fan of vibrational medicine, because it can be immediate. Like the moment that the true vibration has changed, it can be immediate. So I start talking to this guy the next day, and he says, do you want to go for dinner? And it's the first time that I felt like actually excited to go on a first date. Before that, I was like nervous in the stomach. Like I wanted to go, but I was always like, I felt sick in the stomach. Now this guy asked and I'm like, yeah, sure. And that night, obviously, blah, blah, blah. We've got 3 kids together now, married and like completely settled. And in a way that, I would only have ever dreamed of having. And I would honestly attribute that to the homeopathics and the revelation. It's just the revelation that I had in lining up. I was like holding it back, and that was all me, just all my vibration. And so, my husband and I have both used a few homeopathic remedies over the years. I'm not somebody who like overprescribes. Oftentimes people would think that I'm like, there's a remedy for that. They probably think when I'm in conversation with people, I'm always thinking, I know what you need. I don't, unless somebody
Right.
asks me and I really delve into it. I'm like, you're fine. You'll figure it out. But, that's, I have so much to be grateful for because of the power of homeopathy, because I honestly don't know if I would have been able to recalibrate all those fears and that pattern. And I come from a family where relationships, that was the struggle for us. It wasn't financial abundance that in our family came in spades. It wasn't, these other aspects that some of us deal with. It was relationships have been really trying. So that for me feels like my biggest achievement, to be honest.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What a story.
Yeah.
So, a random question for you then.
Sure.
Is there any emotions that homeopathy particularly struggles with, or is it pretty easy across the board in terms of like, something for every emotion?
Every emotion, everything that I have ever seen, there is a frequency in nature. And of course, God would give us what is needed to recalibrate the human spirit, but it's about finding that right one, because when we have thousands of them, so you got to really take a good case and you want to look at what is the true root cause here. And homeopaths are nothing but detectives, and we look at all the clues and we go up family lines. So I will be asking, what did your grandparents do? What was your grandparents' relationship like? Were they in the war? Because this all plays into it. But in terms of the emotions, what do we see? Like really strong anxieties, fear, panic disorders, strong OCDs. Some people have got that OCD superstition type thing, and they'll say to me, and they'll be slightly embarrassed about the bizarre things that they do. Like when they walk into a room, they got to flick the light on and off 10 times. This stuff matters to me. And so I always encourage people. I'm like, tell me all of the weird things, because it helps me. And I don't think you're weird. It's just showing me the imbalance in your energetic field. And then you let me know how I can help you recalibrate that. I saw a teacher last year and she was struggling with extreme OCD and anxiety. And we're going through the case and I'm like really trying to find it. So I gave her this first remedy initially. And at our follow-up, she said, I had a really bad like panic attack at school over like this situation that happened. And since that, it's heightened, like it's jacked up like times 10, and I don't want to really even leave the house. And I said, would you mind telling me what was the actual situation? And she said, I'm so embarrassed to even say it. I'm like, oh no, please, if you can. And she said, well, I was putting up a poster and one of the little thumbtacks, the little pin, it fell out of the poster. And then I was looking around for it on the floor and I couldn't find it anywhere. And then all of a sudden I looked at my water bottle across the room and the lid was off. And then the panic and the thought hit me that, oh my God, what if the pin is in my water bottle and I swallow it and it's going to puncture something and I'm going to die? What if I swallow this pin? And she said, okay, all right, calm down, just relax. Just put the poster back up. I'll go and tip out the water bottle and make sure, and I'll just fill it up with new water. Anyway, she forgets to do that later and she drinks from the water bottle, which was across the room anyway. But from that moment, the intense anxiety. So then she developed this fear of sharp, pointy things, but on anything, you know, not just in the water bottle, but any sharp, pointy thing, needles, anything at home. If she saw a thumbtack, severe like anxiety. Now, if you go to a doctor or a psychiatrist or a psychologist and you tell them that I've got a severe fear of pointy things, they're going to prescribe you some generalized medication or, you know, sort of antipsychotic for that, or an anti-anxiety med. Now you go to the homeopath and you tell them that, and we will look up in our materia medica. So we've got thick textbooks, and this is where, you know, back in the day, all of the homeopaths, they were also medical doctors. These men were brilliantly smart. Like, they are so left-brained, like dominant, just incredible. You wouldn't believe the things that you can find in our materia medica. And you go through mind, fear, sharp, pointy objects. It's literally in our materia medica. You look under that, you're going to find about 14 homeopathic remedies where the frequency matches up with somebody who has a severe fear of sharp, pointy things. I look through that list to try and see which one most fits her for the rest of her case. You know, what other symptoms of hers, you know, looking at her. So silica was the remedy that we prescribed. She started taking that, just completely, you know, evaporates off that anxiety, that pathological fear that was almost going to keep her homebound. And she conceived. And so now she's like well and truly pregnant, and she's way more relaxed than she was ever going to be on any sort of medication. So this is where, you know, people sort of think like, is my case too complicated? Is it too complex? You know, I've got really deep grief, or I've got really deep resentment, or, you know, whatever it is. I guarantee you there is a remedy for you. It's about finding it.
Woo!
Yeah. It's wild. It is.
Yeah, so one of the things, because when we first connected, you sent me some details as to the origins, because I was just so interested in it. And for you, I mean, I think it's clear that homeopathy is not really known to a lot of people, even though it's one of the most helpful things out there. Mm-hmm. Who are some of the notable people in history that have taken part in homeopathy?
Oh, okay. So, I mean, Rockefeller, of course. A lot of the US presidents used homeopathic medicine. So you guys have all of your statues, right, to people throughout history who have really contributed something, whether it's like the war. That's in DC, isn't it? Yep.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
And so there you have only one memorial for a medical physician, and that is Samuel Hahnemann. You've got a massive statue there of him, and that is, you know, for his contribution to medicine. So yeah, the only physician that you guys have honored was the man who founded homeopathy. Now, to give you a bit of backstory on Samuel Hahnemann, he's German and born in the late 1700s. And he's a medical doctor and extremely bright. I mean, crazy, crazy bright. So he knows like 10 different languages, and he knows them so well that he could even translate medical texts. So when you're a translator of medical texts, you know, you get to read all the discoveries that are even happening in different countries. So back then he was far ahead of the game. And back then in medical practice, they were doing the things like bloodletting, like leeching, like mercury poisoning to try and, you know, stimulate cure. And Samuel Hahnemann was like looking around, and he's like, I cannot take part in this. You are killing people, and I will not do it. So he retired from that, and of course lost a good wage, but he just did translation of medical texts. But he was obsessed with, well, he became obsessed with alchemy. And how that happened is he got a job working for the richest man in Romania, who had the largest collection of esoteric texts in the world at the time. And while Samuel Hahnemann was working in Baron von Bruckenfell's library, he was privy to the works of many great authors. So, you know, people like Paracelsus, Isaac Newton, whoever else. He got to read it all. So he was really exposed to thoughts and concepts that, it's not surprising that he was able to connect the dots to like cures like, and the mode of homeopathy and vibrational medicine. It's all really tied in there with what he was reading. And so, yeah, he was the one who finally pieced it together. He started to do his own experiments on people. And as he started to publish his works, he had doctors all around coming to convert to homeopathy, and they were very loyal. So one famous homeopath back then, his name was Constantine Herring. Now, he was like the highest student in the university studying medicine at the time, and he was commissioned by the university to debunk homeopathy, and he was happy to do it. He was like, sort of the honors student, and he's like, yeah, let me at it. And so he starts researching it, and he's trying to replicate some of their experiments. He goes to the homeopathic pharmacy, and he starts to delve in, and he was actually warned off by the apothecaries back then, and they said, leave it alone, Herring. Don't touch this subject. Trust me, it's not something that you want to be messing with. Just go back to medicine. And it was a warning, not because they made homeopathic medicines back then. It wasn't a warning because they didn't want him to know. It was more like, this is about to turn your world upside down. Just leave it alone. Don't bother. You're on a good track over there. And anyway, of course, Constantine Herring comes to find it extremely successful because he actually wounded his finger in a dissecting, he was dissecting something, and he nearly cut his finger off. So he goes to the allopaths back then, and they said, we need to amputate your finger. And he's like, oh my gosh, I can't lose my finger. I'm a doctor. He ends up trying homeopathic arsenicum album, I believe it was, and his finger began to rapidly cure. Now, when that healed without infection, without any issues, he became an absolute fanatic. And you see Herring then, and he's in conversation. So they're writing letters back then between all the famous homeopaths. But Herring is the one who's going into the inns at night, and all the people are drinking beer, and he's up on the table, and he's just ranting at them, and he's saying, he sort of has this famous speech, and it's you are putting your health in the hands of murderers, going full on. He's they're cutthroats, they're all of this, because of course back then they're bloodletting, they're doing all these things that are not appropriate. So he's full on fanatical. So you've got Herring, but then going through the ages, definitely the US presidents, they were very fond of it. The royal families, the British royal family, are also another famous backers of homeopathic medicine. So the Queen of England, she said she would never go anywhere without her homeopathic first aid kit. So the royal family have always had their own physician. So they had Dr. Fisher was the homeopath that served the royal family. And yeah, they're just patrons of homeopathy. Now, a lot of people don't have nice thoughts on the Queen and stuff like that, but the overall message to me is that why have the people, they can afford any medicine in the world. Rockefeller could have afforded any medicine in the world. Why do they turn to homeopathy, and yet it is hidden from everybody else? It doesn't seem right, So to me, that's where I want people to know, and I want to share it. And how we were talking earlier about, what we're up against, I would say the mainstream medical model right now is completely crumbling. Yeah, my dad's a doctor. I get a front row view into it. And of course, through my patients, they can't tolerate the load, the burden that's coming through, because we are so sick. Humanity is very, very sick because our spirits are wounded. And so it's a whole thing in that, but they can't keep up. But the issue that really drives me is fertility. And when I look, and I specialize in fertility, I analyze sperm and sperm tests all day, every day. And I can say without a doubt that we are in so much trouble. We are facing, the 6th mass extinction event, because if sperm counts, and mainstream scientists will tell you this, if they continue to decline on the trajectory that we are on, we will have no more healthy sperm, and that is the end of us. And so whilst it is like a nice idea to sort of just do my work and be successful in private and not be so outspoken in trying to share this with the world, if we don't all band together and start to heal this earth and heal our bodies, we're done. And we're not talking like hundreds of years. We're talking like, within 100. And mainstream medicine will tell you that. And the reason that people aren't quite so panicked about it right now is because we look around, right? And we can still see that people are having babies. We know that it's still possible. But what people don't see is where we went through in the millions of sperm, what it's down to now, in the lower millions, where I'm seeing men in their 20s with 0 healthy sperm. They literally have no chance of ever having a child of their own. So their wives have got the option of a sperm donor. And yes, you can use homeopathy to recalibrate that, but it is not normal. So the men these days in their 20s have got the fertility of what men used to have, perhaps in their 50s. It's that bad. But what happens when those sperm counts continue? At some point, we reach 0. And at that point, you will see no one is having babies anymore. And it will be like a Handmaid's Tale sort of story. And that's very distressing. Not only that, it's devastating for couples to not be able to conceive a baby. It's a biological urge. It's what human beings often want to do. Not to say everybody wants to, but most people want that more than anything. And so it's not fair. It's not fair that we're being raised in a world where their body can no longer do that, in my opinion.
And with homeopathy, you can bring it back.
We can, depending on the extent of what has been done. So a lot of my chemo patients, sometimes it's almost like we just can't get it back up. Some we can. It depends on the individual. And what it depends on, of course, is how much capacity does your body have to heal? Because remember, it's not the frequency. It's not really the homeopathy that's healing you. It's the homeopathy that triggers your vital force, the energy that flows through your whole body. We're going to light that up with homeopathy, but it's up to your body as to what it can actually achieve. So if you are so jam-packed with heavy metals and DNA altering, anything, it's like
plastic.
Plastic, everything that's in there. Add on top of that, the emotional traumas. I mean, I can work on pretty much all emotional traumas, but the physical things, they can really disrupt those heavy metals. They disrupt fertility big time. And so how much can your body heal? How willing are you to sort of follow the process? And that might mean you do have to detox your body. You might have to do some of these things which are hard, like sometimes, it's a commitment. I personally find it fun. I love like the health things. I'm always a guinea pig for them, for my patients, because I actually love it. But it's a commitment to a life of healing. And sometimes it can be very difficult. But I don't like to limit anybody because, we're quantum beings. And so when you really comprehend the depths of that, it's like, who's to say you can't jump out of like time and space and alter? They say in our DNA that what they consider the junk DNA really contains like little black holes, like the energy. When you break down the human body, of course, to the lowest, the fundamental level, we see that we are pretty much humming vibrational energy, and they know that, right? The electrons just going round and round. So we are energy. So it makes complete sense that the ultimate medicine for our human bodies would be energetic in nature, like homeopathy, vibration. You want to go to the core. You want to light up every cell. You want to like power them up, allow communication between them. So when you consider, that we have little black holes all throughout our body, that the sunlight in itself is healing and can power these things up, I don't limit anybody ever. I have seen the incurable. I have seen so many people diagnosed with incurable things and they have cured themselves. So I'm not limited by anything, but it is not to say that it is always easy.
Wow. So you're telling me the only chance humanity has is homeopathy, which means people need to share the podcast.
Yeah, I would say, truthfully, it is, there are a few key factors, like regenerative farming is obviously going to be a big thing. Looking after our soil and what we're eating, that's a big thing.
Totally, yep.
That's one. And we've got a couple of different areas that need a big shift, but homeopathy is one of the big shifts, and it's a profound one. And the effects, the far-reaching effects of it, people would find it hard to comprehend, but it's the one. And our goal as a company is definitely to start the homeopathic hospitals and just, shoot them out across the world, because it was only 100 years ago they were thriving. They were not shut down because they were not successful. They were shut down because they didn't have funding. And so at the moment,
on purpose.
Absolutely.
That needs to be noted. It wasn't just no funding because we didn't do well enough. No, it was like, you got to stop doing this.
Yeah. This is not good for my business.
Right.
Because, and of course, people know this, there is no money in cure, and there is also no freedom. It's very easy to keep people enslaved when they are sick, they're dependent. It's easy to keep them in jobs and working excessively hard until they die, if their spirit is, like that. But you would find it very hard. You'd find it very hard to make me do something that is not aligned with like the totality. It's not possible. And so, you look at the events of the last couple of years, how people, like, their minds, it's almost like something in their minds have been altered. I would say homeopathy breaks even those chains. You see freedom, you see things for what they are. And what's really interesting is that I've used homeopathy for a lot of things, but you find your love for other people, for like our brothers and sisters, just your community, it increases, because that is actually the way that we were designed. A pure human spirit. We're made to love and care for each other, look out for each other. We're not meant to live in isolation, and we are not meant to compete. We are meant to enjoy this life together peacefully. And this is where I guess I have some issue with some of the vibrational things, in terms of like the law of, attraction and people creating, is that there's almost like a Luciferic type element to it, where people become self-obsessed. It's all about me and what can I create? And to the point where they're not really concerned with people around them. And that to me is not a whole healed human spirit, because you will feel the love and you will want to serve other people. You just will. It's in us. And that is what makes you the happiest as a human being. It is. You can have the penthouse and the nice cars. And I don't limit people. I think that we are here to have life and have life in the full, and enjoy, all the beautiful things at our fingertips. But there is an element of serving others and banding together. So that's one element of it. But homeopathy, it is the future of medicine, and we will still keep allopathic medicine there for all of the beauty that it does offer, for which it does. Insulin for the type 1 diabetics, the life-saving surgeries. But people have to look at the truth of this, is that these life-saving surgeries would not be necessary the great majority of the time if we used energetic medicine like homeopathy, and we use those other holistic modalities first. You don't need to have those life-saving surgeries, not nearly as much.
Because it wouldn't have gotten that bad.
Wouldn't have gotten that bad. Do you know like how many, even this fascinates me, people get their gallbladder removed, right? They get their tonsils removed because the doctors say, oh, they're playing up and you don't really need those. Well, yeah, you do. You really do. And so in my clinic, I do this, it's like a detox sort of cleanse. And for the people who are having gallbladder attacks, like gallbladder attacks are painful. And it's like the stones are all lodged in there. It's jammed up. And 30% of people in the world have a fatty liver. Now, when you've got a fatty liver, it's all jammed up. The liver is responsible for so many important cascades in the body, detoxing, filtering. So a lot of people's bodies are very toxic because their liver's jammed up. Now, when I do this cleanse, people have like these big stones coming out. They come out safely from the gallbladder so that the gallbladder does not need to be removed. You want that gallbladder so that that bile can flow through, keep the GI tract, keep all of that, a good pH balance, all of that. People who get their gallbladder out have a lot of issues, increases your risk of like colorectal cancer by quite a lot. And yet doctors are trigger happy to take them out. And my sister, my same sister I was talking to you about, she had been having gallbladder attacks. I'm like, right, you got to do it now. You got to do my thing. So she'd gone into Dad and she got her gallbladder and her liver scanned just because we wanted a starting point so that I could show after what had happened. And so she's like jammed up with stones. Her liver has been very compromised for a long time. And when you look at it, it's like she was put on antibiotics for about 7 years straight, like every day nearly. So of course her body got flawed. So the liver's a bit compromised. And to the point where in her pregnancy, her second pregnancy, she was told that she really should abort this pregnancy, that her liver's so compromised, it's not really a good idea to continue. Now, she continued it and she's got a perfectly healthy baby boy, but that's how bad her liver was. Anyway, she does this 1 week cleanse of mine, 1 week. And yes, she did have to fast during it and she just took enzymes and then she did the liver flush and out come all these stones. She goes back the week after that to get my dad to do that same test. Liver function, completely normal. Fatty liver, gone. And gallstones, there was only a few left in there where it had been, really bad before. On the brink, they're saying, you need to get this out. So that's what she could do in 1 week. But, and Dad, like, before she did it, we went out to dinner, but the night before she started her cleanse. And Dad's like, girls, you don't really think that, like, you can actually get those stones out, do you? And I was like, yes. And he's like, if that was true, that would mean that millions of surgeries a year are a rort. And I was like, just like laughing because I'm like, Dad, it is a rort. So many things in modern medicine are a rort. And he's pretty switched on. He's, we get on so well. We're so close and we agree on almost everything. Not everything though, some things like that. And I can deal with like people who are ignorant, who just don't know better. I got no problem with that because that's just fine. We're all ignorant until we know. I just can't deal with like arrogance, like the sort of doctors who really, they want to stay on that pedestal and they don't want to be questioned and that sort of arrogance. But yeah, with my dad. And so when my dad sees that result, then it's just like, no, crap. Okay. And this is it. People don't know what they don't know. And so many people, they come to my Instagram page and they see the results of this cleanse because people send me like the gross photos from the cleanse, like all the gallstones and all that. And they're like, oh my gosh, I wish I had known that like this was possible. Like I've had my gallbladder out and I've had nothing but trouble since. And this is the thing. It's just knowledge. And I think every single family should have such knowledge, every family in their home. And this is one of our goals as a company, get a first aid kit into every home. And that's for, flus, fevers, conjunctivitis, eye issues.
Which I just had.
Yeah, which you just had.
We went through a whole
kit.
protocol. Yeah, I've got a kit and it cleared it up like so quickly. I was so grateful to have it because I said on my stories, this is one thing that you cannot mess around with. If you don't have your health, you can't do anything, and so many people are giving away their health to earn stuff. And at the same time, it's like, can we figure out a way to do it? I think there's this whole argument of time, productivity. And part of this is that I'm just so curious. Do you deal with in homeopathy a remedy for distraction vibrationally. How does that work?
Yeah, so I would look at the whole case. I must look at the person. Let's pretend it's you. I would look at you in your whole totality, because the distraction is only one little element of that. So whether somebody has distraction or ADHD, this is just like a part of the imbalance. But when we look at you, your whole life, you look at your family medical history, any physical things that you've ever been susceptible to. And I mean, I want to know if you ever had tonsillitis as a kid. I want to know if you ever had eczema. I want to know all of it. And from that is where I would find the homeopathic remedy that best matches. And this is where you start taking that and you find, oh, okay, the distraction's like gone. So in the totality. So yeah, because
that's wild.
There's many different reasons as to why people get distracted, or, we work with a lot of kids with ADHD, and all of that. So, and just on that note quickly, for people who have kids, if you're listening to this, or maybe one day you will, of course, we know complex children is like a rising thing, ASD, autism, ADHD, pandas, all of that. There's a great book written by a NASA researcher. Her name's Amy Lansky, and she's got a PhD in it. She found homeopathy when her son was diagnosed with autism, and she's like, there's got to be something I can do. She went obviously the mainstream medical route there. There's nothing but a diagnosis there. They don't prescribe anything to help. They might give some medications to try and subdue the child, but there was nothing. Anyway, she's just a researcher. She researches for NASA for a living. If there's something on the internet, Amy Lansky is going to find it. She finds homeopathy. She goes to the local homeopath, gives the full case. She's like, my son, he loves milk. He's obsessed with milk. He's like, the kid's really like bright and talented in some things, but won't do eye contact, won't do all these other things. So diagnosed autistic, all of that. She was prescribed carcinosin for him. It's one of our most popular remedies. And it's the cancer miasm, where you see oftentimes there's cancer in the family history. Often they come from like high achieving families. That's just a bit of a thing. I could go on about the cancer miasm, but that's a long story. Anyway, her son's diagnosis over like the space of a year, completely removed, eye contact back, completely thriving, healthy kid. Now in that, Amy believes that it was the result of a medical intervention where the heavy metals overwhelmed his body and brain, because it was a shift before and then him after. Now, what that tells you is that vibrationally, homeopathics can trigger, the body, but it can even detox. And of course it can. Like, let's say you light up your body energetically and it goes, right, we've got a lot of aluminium in here and it's causing inflammation in the brain, which is resulting in symptoms that look like autism. We need to clear this out. We got to get this out. And so the body's motivated into action to achieve that. So yeah, it's the totality of symptoms though. So distraction, that, if you look up distraction in our Materia Medica, you'll find probably 400 remedies listed under that. The same with anxiety, 400 remedies listed under that. So you've got to go deeper. We want to know, tell me more, give me about 20 other things to work with. And that's where you narrow it down.
I feel like that's one of the biggest problems in our society right now, actually. Is distraction, and is some form of people not being able to actually do what they want to do and not knowing what to do at that point, because they're just so like, I can't even get my brain to focus on anything. So then they just give up and cope. But they do have dreams, but they they feel so far away from it,
Totally. And part of that has to play in with, the way we live these days, like screens, like those quick dopamine rushes, and we're looking for those constant quick. It's like porn. It's like, it's so quick. So then people are like lazy in their relationships. It's like no one's got that energy to persist and like work at things, and, even to become really educated in topics, because Netflix is a distraction. We've got all these distractions, and you go back 200 years. And sometimes I wonder, how did these homeopaths learn so much about all these remedies? Like, I'm jealous. And I think they didn't have like jack crap going on. Like, they were just studying all day. Like, these men, literally, they would have each other over for dinner and they would talk about it all night. And they were together and they were just non-stop. So they progressed so far. Whereas for us as a generation, I'm not sure we're progressing as far because the distractions are so quick and easy. And even food,
because the
right?
geniuses are distracted.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say absolutely, there are people all around right now with such brilliance, like a divine plan inside of them. It's what they came to earth to do and share with the world. And what I love about working with people is that those passions are so unique to all of us. Like what's written on our hearts is unique. Like my job as a homeopath, that's unique, like to me and my role in the world. And, other people I meet and they're like, I just have this insane desire to create beautiful, jewelry for people, just beautiful pieces to make them feel beautiful. And it's like, that is contributing to a better world by virtue of us enjoying the beauty of being here. And I'm like, that's your thing, you're here to share that. And, we all have something, and there is no feeling on earth like living on purpose and knowing where you're heading and enjoying the journey of it, watching it unfold, to wake up in the morning and to be excited about your day. I just can't imagine how people feel waking up and going to a job or living in a relationship that's so broken that this is in your face every day. You've got one precious life here in this body, with this spirit, and sure, maybe you got more, but why not live it now?
Why not live it now? That's right. Sorry, I yelled there, but I got a little passionate. I get passionate when I think about distraction and people that are so capable not doing anything, because I know there was a time in my life where I was like that. And I relate back to and I want to get like almost yell at myself like, come on, what are you doing?
And look at, and is this before, this is obviously before you wrote your book, and
Right.
And how did you get on the right path?
For me, I mean, you mentioned it earlier. It was kind of the Dr. Joe mixed with mystic, esoteric teachings, a lot of different studies of self-realization combined with the practical modern tools. I had no idea about homeopathy, and I am going to absolutely become an expert in this because I need to know if this is legit.
Yeah.
And I have already witnessed myself that it is to some extent, because it did what it did for my health the other day, literally the other day. And so I have that, but I'm so fascinated as to the emotional implications and the genetic. We have Bruce Lipton. I think you talked about him before. I don't know in this conversation, but in epigenetics, and what you're really talking about is epigenetics through homeopathy.
Absolutely. I was at a festival 3 years ago with Bruce Lipton, and everything that he says, he's probably one of my favorite scientists, and everything, it lines up with homeopathics. And this is why you can have some people who they really do all the right things. They really do. And yet they might end up with the heart attack at 50. That's like out of the blue. And it's a true shock. You hear some of these cases and it's like, what? They were like relaxed, they're happy. And you're like, what? This is where that energy, like inherited down the family lines, was not recalibrated on that deep cellular level. And so the heart, of course, it bubbles along under the surface and people don't see it. They don't really know. It's hard to see. It's obvious if you've got a skin condition or you've got asthma, but the heart often goes unflagged. So I would recommend homeopathic treatment to everybody, and to anybody who can seek homeopathic treatment before having kids. You give your offspring the best chance. You can clear those miasmatic layers. There are French homeopaths. Now, it's interesting in France, if you want to be a homeopath, you must be a medical doctor first, and then you're allowed to practice homeopathy. Now, in France, their number one selling cold and flu medication in the pharmacies is oscillococcinum, which is homeopathy. So in America or in Australia, you go to the pharmacy and you say, I've got the flu, what can you give me? They'll give you a pharmaceutical. You do that in France, you get given homeopathy. So this is why statistically French doctors, they say over 85% of French medical doctors use homeopathy. And that is true because they use oscillococcinum. They're not homeopaths as such. They wouldn't have the knowledge I have, but they still use homeopathy and prescribe it. And there are some great French homeopaths who are working more in eugenics. Now, eugenics has a bad name because of Hitler, but what we're really talking about here is clearing those miasmatic, those generational taints. What is it that coming down family lines has distorted the energy? Let's clear that. And they believe that if we did this for up to 4 generations, that 4th generation would be back to sort of divine blueprint, the way that human beings are meant to function without all of this chronic disease being inherited. So fascinating, their work.
Yeah. I don't even think people think about how their grandpa or great grandpa could have went through something. So many people don't even know those people. And to really understand that it's in there, it's not just because there's so much talk out there right now about how, there's a layer here of in your past, this happened. And we talked about that a bit, but so many people don't realize actually, no, something could happen to your grandpa, your great grandpa, even further down. I mean, how many generations do you think it goes?
Look, I only really work with like 2 to 3 generations. And I rely on the homeopathics to do the rest of the work because it's impossible for me to really gather the info, 7 generations up.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, I think that...
And they're probably the same, right? The same issues. Like there's only, the human experience is only there's only so many things you can go through. So even if it was 17 generations ago, it might be related to what your grandpa, because maybe they didn't clear it. So it's been in the line for 10 generations. And so you can still get it. I don't know.
Yeah. It's, I think you can clear out so much that you don't know. And that's why homeopathy is so good. I work with a lot of the women, they're very forthcoming. They've got a list for me of things they want to tell me, and they'll go into the deepest aspects of their traumas. Men tend to be dragged to the homeopath by their wives, and they're like, okay, tell her everything. And, they can be, they'll tell me, some big things. Now, it's so interesting when they take the homeopathic remedies because they're often skeptical, which I encourage because I think a smart person should be skeptical of something new until you see it for yourself. And the emails that I get from these men after that is I had one just last week, and it was this man, and he's married, they're trying to conceive, and he's had a real issue with being faithful. He's been very unfaithful quite a lot, even during this trying to conceive journey, and sort of up until currently, unfortunately, which has been very hard on the wife, but she loves him. And it's, when we look back at it, his parents divorced in a similar situation to mine, just shock, grief, and he also left his country and emigrated to the US. And so that homesickness, that missing where he was from. And so, cheating is just an aspect of looking for a thrill, something to feel good and feel something, because he was feeling sort of numb in his marriage and not really connected to the emotions. And he can't get vulnerable. So when you're married, it was difficult for him to really have a vulnerable, intimate connection with his wife. So he'd look for sort of quick fixes in flings. And so I said, all right, we're going to try Ignatia. And so he took it, still skeptical, and his following email was I actually can't believe it. All I'm thinking about is those memories from when I was 10, and this guy's 45, and that's 35 years ago. And his mind is taking him back to that point in time where it all began, where his beautiful family was broken up because his dad was unfaithful to his mum. And, back then, not many people in his country got divorces. So he just felt, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Shock, horror. Then they move, and long story short, and he just felt, he's I feel like my emotions are just cracked open, and I can see that with my wife, I've not let her into this part of me ever. And so that's, that's how it goes. And then that's the pattern of it. So something like cheating, around the world, people just look at it and they say, oh, you're awful, you're an awful person. Or people who are alcoholics or addicted to drugs or porn or whatever it is that they're addicted to, it's just an expression, as their spirit is just looking for some way to cope because it's wounded. And when people understand health like that, they understand human behavior better, we can actually help. You know, we're not going to condemn or judge anything. We're going to help you fix the problem.
But people don't know you can fix it through vibrational healing with homeopathy.
And so they're stuck in shame. Yep. And they're stuck in shame. They do these drugs and stuff in private and it's hidden. Whereas if I could just, shout that from the rooftops, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with your soul. There's nothing really even wrong with your spirit. It's just a bit wounded, and that wounding may have had nothing to do with you. If you look at the trajectory of alcoholics, you will see this run in family lines, and it is a trauma type response to cope with alcohol, and they crave it. This is like a genuine craving. It's not because they're weak. Their body craves it. And you'll see in that the pattern of like the other diseases with, rheumatoid arthritis and all of those autoimmune type things. It's self-destructive. To be an alcoholic is very self-destructive. And you'll see that. And when you go up, and I'll ask patients, is there a history of schizophrenia, bipolar in your family, and, any suicides, all this sort of stuff? You see that often with the alcoholism. And in homeopathy too, what's interesting in that miasm is there are a lot of good aspects of people that I'm looking for. I'm not looking for all their traumas and their problems. I also want to know, where do you thrive? What are you really good at? Because that's indicative to me as well. The man who is very artistic, very creative, or passionate in like theater or drama or something, or the people who are very spiritually connected. You know how some people, it's like they can sense spirits, like they really can. They've got some sort of connection there. That's important to me because there's a couple of remedies where that shows up really strong. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay. So this has been a fantastic conversation. And this will come out and it'll be somewhere in the high 80s or 90 of Universa Game, 90 episodes. And we have not, in the entire 90 episode run, ever had an external sponsor of any sort. We have not worked with any companies on purpose because I have been so picky, and I have been like, you know what? I only want to work with a company that I genuinely feel when somebody invests I know that it's going to help them. And that is why I decided to partner with you and what you're doing to be the first company that comes on and is a part of Universa Games. So I just wanted to say to the people that are listening and that are watching, I don't know if you're watching or you're just listening, but this is the first company that I have found in the entire world that I truly believe will help and make a massive impact in your life. And I have experienced it firsthand. And so with that being said, I believe this is the future. And this is why I'm sticking the neck out on the podcast. And I'm sure you are too, by talking about and going up against the fucking giants. It feels like sometimes.
Yep.
And we're doing this because it really has changed. You have thousands and thousands. I mean, how many patients have you seen that have been cured with homeopathy? I mean, what would you say?
Oh, it'd have to be in the thousands. And, babies born. How many babies are born? I see people who went through, I've had one couple, 20 rounds of IVF. And, mainstream medicine said, no, it's never going to happen. Homeopathy says, yes, it can happen. We just need to recalibrate all of the internals. So the blessings of like my work and what I have seen, it's far reaching. And once people experience it, these people become obsessed. And this is why I'm running, this course at the moment where I'm teaching people to use homeopathy and become practitioners, just on a basic level, but they can prescribe it for themselves, their family, but for others. They can make money off this as well, become practitioners and help people. And so many people, so many of my patients have signed up to do it because it has changed their lives and they want to be part of that for everybody else. So we have...
I want to.
Yeah.
I want to do it too.
You'll love it. And look, and you totally should do it. I will send you the links. But we have nurses and midwives, a lot of people who lost their jobs after the last couple of years, a lot of people who just wanted career change. They could see this is not working anymore. I've got this famous OBGYN. I say famous because she's always on like Good Morning UK. She's their doctor who goes on their like Good Morning News series. And she has joined my course. Here is like an OBGYN in that caliber. And she's like, I need this because it's not working anymore. IVF, I cannot work another day in the IVF clinic. I can't do it. So the tide is changing. Now is the time for like life on earth. And I'm sure a lot of us feel it, right? Like we are on an upward trajectory. It's like, yes, we are wading through like a little bit of the chaos that has to happen, but we need to build and we do not need to waste time attacking the old system. We just need to build our new system, which will ultimately make its reach like obsolete on the other side. And we are building, and I cannot believe like the success that we are having in sharing this knowledge because people are recognizing it as the truth. They read it, they hear me speak, and they know like it almost sounds familiar to them, like something they've always known internally was possible. And it becomes like this just absolute passion. And so I am so honored that you would have me on. I didn't realize I'm the absolute first person that you've ever like had on in this like sort of affiliate action. But yeah, we would love to have anybody that is listening to this who is interested in learning about homeopathy. You can sign up. Nick will have a bit of a discount. I promise you that this is a life and this is a career. I mean, even if you just did it for self reasons, you know, looking after yourself and your family, you would have the power at your fingertips to transform the lives of people that you love. And like, what else in life do we want? Like, we want personal transformation. I have healed myself so much with the power of homeopathy by studying it and seeing the different facets of it. And those in my circle and those that I've treated as patients as well, they are so blessed. And we all say like, we feel so lucky to have found it, you know, and as early as I have, it's like, yeah, we aren't stopping. And so our goal is to bring on thousands and thousands of people who learn and understand, start to spread this message. And when we do start our homeopathic hospitals, which I most certainly plan to get going in the next year or so, you guys will be able to work there. You can see it firsthand, the way that we've always done it, and we can gather. And these places can be like, not just for medicine and, you know, that sort of healing, but like community, volunteering, being together, the way that humanity is meant to thrive.
Yeah, it's funny you say that you didn't realize. And I feel like for me, this isn't about, you know, I listen to so many other podcasts and I'm not going to call them out, but there's a lot of podcasts that are like, get your green juice here, folks. And it's just like, what is this doing? Am I actually going to know if this has an impact in my life? And I was always about, and that's why we've filmed, you know, each of these episodes has been like an hour at least. So, you know, we've been doing this podcast for years, and I was like, yeah, it's got to be something where I need to be able to say, I spent money on that and it was worth every penny. And I feel like there's so much shit out there that people can't say that. They're like, maybe it worked. But if you can have a visceral experience of you taking something and you witness the healing, I mean, that's what I think connected me to you in the first place. Was it felt familiar. You're saying it felt familiar. It felt familiar to me. I'm like, it feels like there was something missing. Like, there seems to be a lot of plants out there. There seems to be a lot of ways nature is healing us. I mean, there's a lot of evidence, you know, of grounding and stuff like that. And so there's got to be another level to it. And I really feel like this is it, you know?
And another beauty of homeopathy is that it's inexpensive in terms of how long the kit lasts people. If people get a kit in their home, it comes as this liquid stock, or you can also buy pillules, you know, from the health food store. But what you're also going to find, and people were asking me to, share a petition on Instagram the other day, because your Whole Foods all across the US, they all sell homeopathic medicine, but they are under a big push right now to remove all of the single remedy options that they have there. And from the conversations, the messages that people were sending me on Instagram, they said they've spoken to the local store owners saying, like, please don't remove these. Like, they're so popular. And the guy said, the store manager said, I know, we're actually under orders to remove it because their rationale is that they're not selling enough. And he said, but I literally can't keep them on the shelves. So I'm not sure what's happening in other stores, but that's certainly not the case here. And he said, but he's powerless to keep homeopathy in the stores. So the FDA is certainly aware of the growing, popularity of homeopathy. And this will sort of be their last ditch attempt to sort of keep it out of people's hands. So we will definitely keep our first aid kits. We ship probably 70% of our kits to the US. And it's nano doses of medicine. So you put 1 drop of that frequency into your 500 ml or so water bottle, you shake that water bottle, you have dispersed that frequency throughout the water. So you then have a lot of doses. So you only use like 1 or 2 drops at a time. So homeopathic medicine doesn't expire. So if you buy a kit and you store it safely, you can expect that to last you, 5 years, 10 years. And so that's an investment. But you think of not only all of the health that is gained in that, but you're not going to need, trips to the doctor. I've got families whose kids used to get tonsillitis all the time. They're using belladonna and heparin sulf. They have not, needed to use antibiotics. And that is a bloody win. If you can avoid antibiotics, that is worth the cost of buying a kit just for that, So in terms of like your overall impact on your health, your longevity, so it's just, you sort of make it a priority to, invest in things that work. But it being cost effective is a big draw card of it. And that's why ultimately, the goal too is with these homeopathic hospitals, Samuel Hahnemann, he used to treat people for free after certain hours. So when he finished up practicing, he was in France. He used to treat the rich and famous and they would pay him well up until about 4 p.m. Then he opened his doors to the poor and he had a packed room and they would do these quick consults to help the poor. And that is the way that it should be. It should not be who can afford it. It should be, healthcare should be for everybody, because when we have a healthy world, all the citizens, our lives all improve. So that's, the goal there. So you've got kits and you've got courses, but one warning is that if you do sign up for the course, I just guarantee you that you're not going to be able to sort of stop. And almost every person that I took through this course just gone, we just finished one with 60 practitioners. So they're mainly nurses, midwives, a lot from the US and around the world. They're like, well, that's me for the rest of my life. I'm just, they're obsessed. It is so fun to learn it. It's just thrilling. And that's it.
Brilliant. All right. Well, everyone who's listening, if you're watching, you're listening, check out the description. We're going to have all the information you need. It's going to be very clear there, the show notes, if you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And I feel like we covered so many different things, from the history to the people doing it, to the vibrational, to the metaphysical. I just feel like it's been a brilliant conversation and I learned so much about it. So thanks for coming on. All right. So as we discussed on the podcast, this is, after 80 episodes, the first company that we are bringing aboard Universe the Game, because it's something that I genuinely believe in. And it's something that has worked for me in my life, and I kind of wanted to share with you what I have. So I live nomadically. For those of you that have been following along, you know that. But if you haven't been, I travel around and get Airbnbs each month wherever I want to be in the U.S. And so what you're looking at behind me is an Airbnb. And what I travel with is their homeopathic first aid kit. Now, what this comes with is it comes with basically all the things you might need in an emergency. Looks kind of like this if you're on video, but what I used it for is just one of many things that could happen. Is I woke up before a 16-hour drive and I had my eye was completely bloodshot, and I knew what I needed to take, so I took it, and it helped tremendously. So it saved me so much time, so much energy. I didn't have to go do any paperwork, any bullshit. It literally is, you are self-sufficient. And if there's anything that I'm passionate about, it's being self-sufficient, not relying on anyone else for anything if you don't have to, and outsource it, especially when you don't know what it is. And if we can keep it as natural as possible, that is the only things that I want to be putting in my body. To get yourself a first aid kit, there's other things you can do. You can become a practitioner. There's going to be a link for that as well. But also, what's included with that is a Zoom consultation. So you'll get in a group and you'll be very detailedly explained how it works. And it also comes with a sheet that shows how it works as well. But so it doesn't just a blind thing where you order it, you don't know how to use it. No, you're going to get the full rundown as well. All right. So I'm passionate about this. I think this will really help you. Check it out if you're interested. And that'll do it for today's episode of Universe the Game. And I will see you in the next episode. And until then, peace.